My end goal is not to teach you everything about narcissism. I want to use that hook to bring you in to teach you about you. And if you're you, you are far less likely to be caught up in a narcissistic relationship, psychopathic relationship.
If you are targeted like this, of course, you know the truth. You want to defend yourself. You think that people will be reasonable
You know they're wrong.
and listen.
Right.
Yep.
The only way you can get out is to push in, which is counterintuitive.
Jerry Wise, what do our listeners need to know about your early life to best understand who you are now as a professional?
Well, I suppose growing up in my family, I had a covert narcissistic mom. So I experienced a lot of guilt and shaming and things like that, and never felt really good about me. Then there's other life experiences I found myself in: narcissistic relationships, narcissistic churches where I pastored and was in leadership, and just found myself in a lot of narcissistic families, so to speak, or organizations. And sadly, that was not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then being a recovering codependent, I just found myself sucked into a lot of unhealthy relationships.
How did that spur you to your clinical work now?
Well, I first of all realized that, there's something broken in my family. There's something broken in me. Now, I don't know all that is, but I'd like to learn about that because I find myself following paths that are, I suppose, tangential or next to what kind of something I want to do, but not truly me. And so becoming a pastor, doing music professionally, I was doing music so my mom would be happy. I was going to go to law school so my dad would be happy. I became a pastor so everyone would be happy, including God. And I'm doing all these things, but I don't know what I should be I just know what others would like me to be. And so from that experience, I realized I need to learn how to make some changes, but I mean very deep changes. I wanted to be myself, which is being someone else than who I am. That may sound funny, I don't know, but to be my true self would not be who I was then. And I didn't know how to do that. Then in seminary, I stumbled on a great professor who also was a Bowen systems family therapist and a psychologist and a Lutheran pastor. He was wonderful and introduced me to Bowen family systems. And I've never been the same since. I found a new way of looking at my problems and the systems I was in. And I never saw that before. I never was able to zoom out. I was always zooming in and always zooming in, but not in a healthy way. I couldn't see the bigger picture and see the systems dynamics and how I was affected by that. And I never thought I could feel this way, the way I feel in terms of more confident, more, I thought, I would have said you're crazy. It would never happen like this.
What's an example?
I tried almost everything, from exorcism to all the therapies that are available to conferences to workshops. I tried everything I could to change.
Well, Jerry, what's an example of how that systems approach affected your life?
Well, first of all, it saved me when I was a pastor. And when I was a pastor, I just felt lost as a pastor because basically I had recreated my own family of origin. And it was the church. I had started a couple churches, and if I'm starting them, guess who's going to come? My family, but not my blood family, just the world of the family that's inside me is going to follow me. So I have a recreation of all that and trying to figure out, how do I deal with people? For example, I had some narcissists and some very broken people in the church. And they then began these rumors and lies about me. And I'm going, I haven't treated them badly. What on earth is this about? And I felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt from my past, and guilt and shame was the norm growing up. And I felt a lot of that and felt incapacitated as a leader. And I thought, I'm the pastor. And in fact, I have a lot of authority in this particular church, but I, I just felt ineffectual. And I thought, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And then began to apply. Edwin Friedman's a great author. He wrote Generation to Generation, in which he applies family systems thinking to churches, synagogues, organizations, whatever. And he saved my life. I mean, I was able to be myself while staying connected to other people and also being wiser about the system that was going on that I couldn't see. And so that really made it much more effective for me to grow as a person and to be a better leader.
And Jerry,
But to be a better leader, you have to deal with your own issues. That you don't just lead by getting some nice principles. Good luck using the nice principles. And I can tell you 100 of them. But that's not how you become a good leader or a strong leader. That's how you become a kind of superficial leader, rather than the changes that are inside you.
So Jerry, what are some of the elements of that family systems model that you found illuminating?
Well, I think, first of all, realizing how affected I was and am affected by my family of origin. You're never not affected by your family of origin. I don't care how old you get, because that's where we began. And we were very connected to this organism called this family of origin. And so those dynamics continue throughout your life. You can learn to manage those, even heal some of those, and you can begin to change in that deep, serious way of dealing with the family of origin inside you. A lot of people try to make changes in their lives while ignoring what I want to say, the beginnings, the where things started. And if you feel a lot of shame and guilt in your life, for example, then you can go to a conference and talk about shame and guilt. The problem is you'll probably still stay in the rut of shame and guilt. I was just watching an author who was talking about narcissistic abuse. And he was talking about, here are the signs you need to look for. Here are the things that narcissists do, which I also do as well. I will share those things. I just know if that's all you know, that won't be enough, because you still have the trance from your family of origin that you're still living by. Now you just have a few new thoughts to see, but it won't protect you from what you don't know, which is the inner family of origin that's there. And if you can deal with that, you almost don't need the rules.
Mm.
You won't need watch out for this, watch out for that. You won't need that. You just will be a stronger, more aware, clarified person. You will see clearly more of what's going on, rather than, let me tell you the 10 things you need to watch out for. The thing is, why do people who know those 10 things still get into a narcissistic relationship again? Why? They know the 10 things. What's the problem? Because it's not the 10 things that will protect you. It's your pseudo self, your non-real self, that gets hooked up with a narcissist. And I try to help people become their real selves that they would have become had their family been healthy, and how to do that.
So what was maybe a small insight that you had in learning this family systems model that then allowed you to start to make a change?
Let me give the example, which I think is a common one. If I say no to someone because they want me to do something, or they want me to do something and I have to say no, what do we usually feel? Shame or guilt, right? I've done nothing wrong. I've simply said, no, I prefer not to do that. But it's these systems feelings from this family of origin are so strong and still going through me in the Wi-Fi that I still feel guilt and shame. Now, you can learn how to say other things, but we want to break that bond. We want to get that part of the family out of you and realize that that guilt and shame is not yours. It really isn't. It's a foreign thing. It has been added to you by your programming. It's not the real you, but it's the real what you were trained to be you. And so when I began to notice why am I doing all these automatic things that don't make sense? I'm kind of logical. I was going to go to law school, so I was kind of a thinker. Yeah, I thought, why do I feel guilty when I haven't done anything wrong? Because I'm still connected to the umbilical cord of the family of origin, to the Wi-Fi and the internet of the family of origin that's still operating in me. And then becomes, okay, now what do I do with that? And of course, the first thing is you have to recognize it. If you don't recognize it, it's hard to change what you can't see. And if we look in a narrow way, it's hard to change. If you can look in a wider zoom out perspective, you then can begin to see how you could change. And of course, it does take practice. And I remember, working on that and just doing a little practice at home with my own family. I call it the family prayer example. When my father died, then we didn't have somebody at the head of the table. So I'm elected as the pastor to pray for all the meals. I don't want to do that. I never wanted to do that. I don't want to come to the family meal and I'm the family pastor. I'm not your pastor. I pastor over here. I'm just Jerry over here. And that was an expectation. And so beginning to challenge my family and saying, no, I don't want to do that. Well, how horrible of a person would you have to be to say no to your mother who lost her husband and to say no? I mean, how evil can I be? But I don't want to do it. And it's not personal. I'm not saying it to hurt anybody, but I had to deal with the shame and guilt and also hold firm to what I believe, what I desire, and what I want. And if someone feels hurt, I can't control that if I have done nothing wrong. If I've done something wrong, then I need to make amends. But if I hadn't, then I need to continue with my work of self-differentiation. And that was a very difficult thing for me to do. People say, oh, well, I'd tell my family in a second. I don't want to do it. Yeah, but you're not in my family. You're in your family. And I could go to your family and do something real easy. It's when you're doing it in your own family that it's much harder.
So, Jerry, we have these elements in the family and also the work as the pastor. I can almost hear past guests of my show or even people who watch talking about how, sometimes there are highly narcissistic pastors and that they would be driving things and setting a tone. So for you as the pastor, as the leader, how is it happening to you?
And certainly there are narcissistic pastors. There's no doubt. And I don't know, maybe I had some traits of that as well. I suppose you have to kind of have something like that to start churches. And you have to have some traits of that, but I wouldn't consider myself a narcissist. I've got too much guilt. I've got too much empathy to do that. If I had a far less, I might think differently. And how does it happen to me? Oh, I think it happens to pastors all the time the other way. Because you'll have narcissists in your congregations. Most people think pastors run the show. No. The people who run the show at churches are the narcissists and the most dependent. That's who run the churches. The pastor just happens to be there. Now, does that mean they're not narcissistic pastors? There absolutely are, who are authoritarian, and I've seen all that, been there, done that, I understand. But for a lot of pastors, they're not the ones in charge. The family system called the church is what's in charge and how it functions. Because if you notice, a lot of churches, they'll have a lot of turnover of pastors. Why is that? Why is there that turnover? Because they've run afoul of the system. And also probably didn't understand the dynamics of what was going on in the council or in the governing board or in the whole congregation. They were not aware of what was really happening, and so they will misstep. And then now we'll find a new pastor. We'll find a new pastor who will go along with what we think or believe. A lot of people would say, well, that's good. Then you have a church who believes what it believes, and they want a pastor who is aligned with that. I'm not talking about beliefs. I'm talking about the emotional dynamics, not the beliefs. I want someone where I stay in control. I have my own feelings. Nobody challenges me. That's what it's not about theology. It's not about theology.
Jerry,
And it goes the other way.
Yeah.
You're right, in churches as well.
Jerry, with this metaphor, then, how tight could we make it to the family? Is it as extreme as you see a parent couple type form and that you see people functioning more like children, or is it more vague?
It's all that. One couple were probably the lead problem folks, and they could shake my confidence in no time, because a narcissist or kind of a really neurotic kind of person can identify your weak points. They know how to identify. It's unconscious, even for them. And I realized that. Both of them grew up in homes where they had abusive fathers. And I was Father Jerry or Father Cephas. Now, what do you think could happen with that? We're fine for a while, and then all of a sudden, I'm the enemy. And I've done nothing different than what I did. I've not treated them any differently. And then they start saying, Jerry never says hi to us anymore. What? Never says hi to you? I talk to you all the time. Or Jerry's just wanting to do this, or Jerry's just on a power struggle. And it gets projected, what they're doing gets projected onto me. I'm trying to do a power struggle. I haven't changed what I've been doing at all. And in fact, I can't think of hardly anybody I wouldn't say hi to if they said hi to me. I mean, I can't imagine. That's just not me. But then they start telling other people. And now we start to have this murmur and this going on. Here we have the family dynamics again. And now they're working with, and in churches, we call it brothers and sisters, Brother Dave, Brother John, brother. And I'm not even talking about liturgical or Catholic church. I just, we're all brothers and sisters in a Christian perspective. And I know there's other faiths but I'm just saying that's a common family notion. And so now we're going to get the other siblings on our side and go against Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And dethrone him, and also make him so he has to bring in a higher bishop to settle the thing between us and him. So we have to bring in a bigger dad to do that. It's all family systems just playing around again. And if you can see that, you can begin to be better at doing it and better at handling it. And I found I could handle it better once I could understand the system. Before, I was just making missteps all over the place, like defending myself. The worst thing you can do is defend yourself because you look guilty. So when I have this other couple who were close to the troublemaking couple, you have this other couple who I had known for quite a while. They knew me and my wife at the time. And they'd come to me, why are you treating them so badly? I didn't know I was. And they said, well, they said you're doing this, 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 and this. Okay. What would you, and then I learned, grew, and began to understand more. What would you like me to tell you? I think what you guys need to do is decide whether or not you believe that's true or not. And I'll leave it to you. You've known me for 10 years. You decide whether those things are true. If you decide they're true, go with it. If you decide they're not, then don't. But I don't see any reason, there is no reason to defend myself. And they went, well, that's a tough one. And that begins to loosen up the triangle between them this couple and me, and I want to loosen those triangles up so that they can come around and see the truth. And defending yourself does not, and it does good. Because I could have said, well, let me tell you, no, I've never done that, and I've never done that. And I know that instance, and this is what I did, and da 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 da. No, that's the old Jerry that was codependent. This is a newer Jerry wanting to be a more self-differentiated and mature Jerry. The more differentiated and mature you are, the more believable you are, and the more you can be counted on. Because they came and expected me to trash that couple. They figured I'd blow them away. And I said, they're not going to get that much power in my own mind. They're not going to get that much power. Because I know what I know. I don't know how to unknow it.
Jerry, on the show, we often talk about triangulation and gossip and strategies like that. And what you just said there, to take the triangle and then to loosen it, is something I haven't heard before. And it's probably counterintuitive, because if you are targeted like this, of course, you know the truth. You want to defend yourself. You think that people will be reasonable
they're wrong.
And listen.
Right.
Yep.
No, they're wrong.
But in fact, it rarely works. And so this idea of this image of a triangle and loosening it, you can't necessarily go in and take it on with facing it, but you can loosen it, and that's going to be a more effective strategy.
And the worst thing I could do, which is what they wanted, because they wanted a triangle with the bishop that was over me.
Yeah.
And they wanted me and the bishop and them. And I thought, that is going to not go well. And so the same is true here. Have you ever seen the Chinese finger things? If you put those on your fingers and you want to get out, what do you tend to do? Pull this way. And what does it tend to do? Gets tighter.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to get out this way, it gets tighter. The only way you can get out is to push in, which is counterintuitive. And the same is true. Much of what happens in systems and in recovery and what I teach people is counterintuitive, because their intuitive has been programmed wrong. So I need to give you counterintuitive, because don't trust your intuitive. Now, I'm not saying don't trust your gut. I'm not speaking too generally, but again, if you're thinking, well, I'm just going to defend myself because that sounds so natural. No, don't do that. And where did you learn to defend yourself? I learned to defend myself in my family of origin. Did it work? Did it work then? But that's what we do. So I just keep doing that, and things get worse. And loosening that triangle, the worst thing I could have done was had couple A, couple B, and me all in the same room. I am tightening that triangle by having us all meet together. Now, is there anything wrong with meeting together? No, you can meet together, but how you handle it's so very important. Because I don't want to strengthen that triangle. I don't want to defend myself in front of the couple who is distorting, while the other couple who's confused is trying to sort out between me and them. They're not the judge of what's going on. And in fact, I even told the couple that came to me and was concerned about how I was treating them, and they were more friendly to me in that way, but still were confused. They had been misled. Mm-hmm. And I said, what I would do is when they come to you to complain about me, simply tell them to come and see me. That breaks the triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell them, come and tell Jerry. If that's the way you feel, then you should go and tell Jerry and get that worked out with him. Because what are they going to do? What are they going to do to make it better? And if I'm really bad, they're not going to be able to help it. If I'm totally innocent, they're still not going to be able to help it. They've just been pulled in, so the original couple does not have to take responsibility for their own distortion. So that happens all the time in people's lives, at work, in the family. And that's one of those family dynamics that just keeps on giving. It keeps on giving. And we have many of those.
Jerry, there are so many layers to this sort of manipulation too that can be built up over years. Now I'm thinking, let's say you tell somebody, well, we'll go tell Jerry. But what if in fact that person is stonewalling and you say, go tell them, well, he's not actually taking your calls and things like that. And so in a system so tight, I think your idea of loosening things is the key. And in a system that is wound really tight, the layers and the complexity of manipulation will just seem too hard to navigate.
And if you notice, did I try to change the second couple who came? Did I try to change the first couple who complained? I changed me, not them. That's what loosens up triangle. And so many people go, oh, but what am I going to do with my sister? And I say, don't do anything. What do you mean do anything with? How do I deal with my brother? Well, stop dealing with him. And what I mean by that is not never talking to him, but stop processing what he should be doing inside you. Stop dealing with it and deal with you. That's where your power lays. And that's how I teach. And what I teach about narcissistic abuse recovery is I do teach people to self-differentiate so that they are not caught up in the trance and taken advantage of. And certainly there are things you can learn that, if you catch your boyfriend lying to you, okay, that's a sign. That's not a good thing. The problem is you can go, oh, there's a sign. I think he could be a problem. But where's the real problem in the relationship? It's not he's lying. It's that I still am in love with him. And that's from here on down. And that's the old programming. That's the emotional programming that's still operating. A lot of people deal with cognitive programming, thinking programming. I do too, but I like much better dealing with emotional programming. It's much more powerful, and that's self-differentiation work. It's much more powerful.
And in the family system, there's going to be emotional programming that's going to come there. This is making me think now too. I've had people on the show who work with people who are getting out of cults or are cult deprogrammers. They personally will do the sort of work to talk someone out of a cult. And one of the key signs of something that is a cult is often that it will imitate a family dynamic. I've been around a very dangerous man who also he is always imitating the family dynamic. He'll find a woman, he'll pair with her, and then he'll start treating other people as children. His name is John, and he goes so far as to always have Papa John's pizza at events with him, so that people are, I think, unconsciously associating him with being
He's
a papa.
Clever one.
I mean, the lengths that people go to establish the family thing, it seems to have so much power. And I'm seeing it across different contexts and talking to you. It's amazing.
My whole notion, my whole thing that I offer, and again, I've done over 1,000 or more, 1,500 videos, I don't know what it is, all free to give them away. Why would I do that? And in fact, for many, many years, I didn't even put ads on them. I didn't make a dime because I wanted some other people to experience what I experienced. And it was so powerful. And that doesn't make me a saint. I'm not a saint by any means. But I did want to do that genuinely to affect people as I had been. And that with the family dynamics, if you really want to change, because change is important. Change is if the change is not just behavioral. Change really is deeper than that. And if you want to do that, we want to get our family of origin out of us, which then leaves who? If I took your family of origin out of you, who would be left? You.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I want. I want you. I want you. And if you're you, you are far less likely to be caught up in a narcissistic relationship, psychopathic relationship, far, far more protected in a protected way. Because many times our family program emotionally doesn't teach us how to protect ourselves. It teaches us how to be reactive, but not how to protect ourselves. And that's where I think the work of self-differentiation helps tremendously.
So, Jerry, one thing that I was going to ask you about, and now I'm rethinking altogether, is what are some ways, if you suspect that you've been in a family that has a highly narcissistic dynamic, to really sort through that? It seems maybe now, would you say that that question is even that important if you already suspect it?
No, and I teach about narcissism. I teach about traits. I teach about maybe it'd be good to identify your parents were narcissists if they were. But that's not what my end goal. My end goal is not to teach you everything about narcissism. I want to use that hook to bring you in to teach you about you. But I'll use that as a means to do so, because you becoming a PhD in narcissism is not going to save you. It just won't. It didn't me. And I went to college for graduate school after graduate school to learn about these things. It doesn't protect you. I'm not saying education is not helpful, of course. It is helpful, and we do need to learn about some things. But my goal is to learn about me and how I operate in the system. That will keep me healthy, whole. And if I recognize my parents were narcissists, okay, let's recognize that. And that's very good, because it can give you more information about you. That's what's important about knowing about them, is that it teaches you more about you. And so, just as I have a video I was going to be doing today, and it talked about narcissist parent who rages. What did that narcissistic parent teach you about their rage. It taught you that that's acceptable and justified, and that that's just the way they are, and that it was and probably was a normal reaction to them. That's some programming you got. Where do you find that programming in your life now? We're not going to change your parent to not rage. I don't know we can't do that. I don't know how to do that. That's not even my job. I'm not even sure it's my clients' jobs, because our jobs are not to change our family. Our job is to get our family out of us. That's our job. Now, if you want to go try and change your family, you're welcome to do that. I just think you're going to get tired, worn out, exhausted, and probably not succeed anyway. But you're welcome to try. I certainly tried. Why do you think I got 2 masters? I mean, I thought I could fix my family and have the family I always wanted. Well, it didn't work. Such a shame. Such a shame. Because I had all the answers, which was pretty crazy. Or narcissistic, I don't know. But when we are recognizing they have rage, again, how does that rage get translated into who I am, how I see things, and what I'm doing now? Because that is impacting me. That did impact me. It doesn't mean you rage, because people say, well, I don't rage because my parents raged. I will never rage. That's wonderful. I'm glad you won't rage. I think that's marvelous. The problem is you have the rage dynamic inside you. Then I say, do you ever criticize yourself in a very mean way? Yeah. So you do rage. You just rage with you. Okay. That's it, because the dynamic's going to be there somewhere, and then we have to use a lot of energy either to push it down or, and what we want to do is to be free from it rather than having to deal with it all the time. And oftentimes the dealing with it is unconscious. We're not as conscious of it, and many people will do the anti-parent. Well, my parent was an alcoholic, so I will never drink. And I'll go, that's a great idea and a good plan. I do encourage that, having been an addictions therapist for many years. Definitely do that. Now, how are you going to get the alcoholic family out of you? You're not drinking, which I think is marvelous and will be to your benefit. But what about the alcoholism that's in you, if I can say ism? They're not drinking, but it's the narcissistic or the alcoholic family that's in you. And I worked with alcoholic families and drug addict families for years, and in family groups and a number of groups together. We'd all, 6 families, 6 addicts, 6 alcoholics, and we would process family dynamic. because I really felt that would help someone truly recover.
So, Jerry, what we're getting at here, rather than looking at signs, looking back at your family, is looking at signs in yourself. So one would be, maybe you came from a family where there's rage, but you have this internal raging at yourself. What are other signs in the self that we could look for coming from a toxic family dynamic?
When do I withdraw? When do I fawn? When do I get angry? How do I get angry? What about shame and guilt? How do you deal with those things? Do you know most of those things are systems dynamics? And when I say, if someone came to me right now and said, your sister, and I do have a sister, she's still living, older than me, your sister just passed away, I would definitely feel sad. And I'd feel upset. Would you consider those fairly normal feelings? I mean, right. And those would be true feelings. Now, if I want to go hurt the doctor because he didn't do a good job at the hospital with my sister, and what's going on here now? Is that normal? Is that, no, there's other dynamics at work. So there are systems feelings and true feelings. There's systems thoughts and true thoughts. I think of myself as, and I remember for years thinking of myself as worthless and stupid, but how are you worthless and stupid? I mean, I don't know. Yet I didn't really believe it, but I did believe it because it was programmed. So those are systems thoughts about me. And I want to have my true thoughts are, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. I'm not a genius, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not, worthless. I definitely have some worth. I don't think I'm the most important person in the world by any means, but I'm not worth less. And in fact, I kind of call that, there's grandiose positivity. I'm the king of the world. I'm beautiful. I can do anything. That's grandiosity, like we have in the narcissist. Then the codependent has grandiose negativity, but it's still grandiosity. I'm horrible. I'm worthless. I'm the least important person in the world. Stop that grandiose negativity. That's grandiose also. How can you be the worst person in the world? Did you measure that? I mean, I want to see the science of that. And that also, it's still looking at you at too big a way. And often that big way is a family of origin way. And so let's get that out so that I look at me as I'm just rather mediocre old Jerry. I mean, that's who I am. And when I die, a few will mourn me, and then in 50 years, they won't remember me. I mean, that's most of our fates. Well, okay, I'm fine with that. Now what can I do that could be positive and helpful and not grandiose? Either way, negative or positively. So those are kinds of things that show up, the family show up in me. Take a look at who did you marry? Who did you marry? Who are you dating? What girls, what guys do you find attractive and are attracted to? If you were the hero in the family, and that was a hero role that was kind of blessed, you got that role because you had to do it as the hero, guess what happens in dating? Guess what happens in marriage? It just keeps rolling on.
Jerry, I think the first one that you mentioned was withdrawal, which seems like a very natural way to deal with things. So how does this play out with when we withdraw?
Well, I think, and there's a difference between, and here's where I like the paradoxes of self-differentiation. You can stay silent intentionally. You can stay silent neurotically. Make sure you're choosing the right one. You can withdraw neurotically. You can withdraw intentionally. Make sure you're doing the right one. So how you withdraw and on what instances that you withdraw give you an idea of how your withdrawal is and how you learn to withdraw when you withdrew when you were in the family. Right? Because
So how do we know which is which?
It's a great Often it depends on the level of anxiety. The family is an anxiety management machine. Everything in the family. Well, in fact, some even say anxiety is the beginning of life. And what I mean by anxiety, I mean it's the spark. And so anxiety has been with us since 250,000 years or however humans have been around, whenever that was. And it depends on where you fall on that spectrum. But it's been around, and anxiety is a very human and biological thing. The horses are all running out there together in the field. The front horse takes a turn and everybody turns at the same time. That's an anxiety response. They're all connected in that Wi-Fi and can go zoop, just like birds, just like, well, we as humans can do the same thing. And so it depends on the anxiety with which you're doing it. That's why I spend so much time trying to help people be calmer, because if you're calmer, you're not as connected to your family of origin Wi-Fi. The more anxiety you have, the more you're going to be, it's going to plug you in to that modem. Let's keep you calmer, because if I can decide, I think what's happening right now is I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to run away, but I don't really want to stick with this conversation. So I think I will withdraw. That's a healthy withdrawal. A neurotic withdrawal is I'm getting way too anxious, way too reactive. I want to smack them in the face, and this needs to stop because I can't handle it. And then I withdraw. One was neurotic, one was intentional. And intentional can make a big, but some people might tell me, well, they made me mad, so I intentionally hit them. And I'm going, okay, you think you intentionally hit them, but you were actually hitting them out of your anxiety and out of your non-calmness and out of your reactivity. And you think that made it okay to do that. No, it doesn't make that okay. You need to become more self-aware. So we have to decide, I can tell someone I love them by saying it or not saying it. Everything has a paradox. And in fact, there's a lot of, if I'm saying I love you simply because I want sex, is that a neurotic choice for I love you, or is that a healthy choice for I love you, or an intentional choice? It's certainly intentional on what you're looking for, but and you can tell your spouse or whomever you love them all you want. I'm not trying to police everybody's I love you, but I'm just using that as an example of the differences between a reactive behavior, thought, or feeling, or a true behavior, thought, or feeling, or a self behavior, thought, or feeling.
So, Jerry, in your model, then, the family system is an anxiety management system. And if that system is not best for you at an individual level, which is common, then what we want to do is get calm, reduce the anxiety, thus better distancing ourselves from that dynamic. Is that how it all goes?
Definitely, because what happens, the more anxiety, and we call it chronic anxiety. There's acute anxiety. I walk up to the Grand Canyon and start looking over it. I've got some acute anxiety. I don't know that's necessarily family of origin anxiety. That's just, I don't want to fall. And my body's going, you may want to back up a little bit here because, you could fall. I don't consider that kind of a systems anxiety. But a chronic anxiety is the anxiety. Every family has a level of anxiety. Every family has a level of self-differentiation and a level of anxiety. And that we take that level with us, that level of anxiety. And the more dysfunctional the family, narcissistic, psychopathic, the more intense that anxiety is. Much more intense. Even though some people say, well, psychopaths don't have any nervousness. They don't feel nervous. They don't feel guilt. No, I understand that. But don't tell me the system that they're operating has no anxiety. I mean, no, that would be a crazy system to be operating in. Now, they may not be aware of it because of their personality disorder, which I can certainly understand. And they do. Sociopaths can lie to you so easily because they don't have that gene in them that tells them this is wrong, or have empathy or nervousness. They can pass a lie detector test because they don't. And that's based on that anxiety, is what that test is based on. And so they're looking to see, is the body reacting to this? Because it's normal for us to do some reacting. Getting back to the anxiety, if you have more calmness, you are less glued to the family of origin stuff, and you're more likely to be differentiated in who you are as a self. And so I do talk about, I have a video called Calmness is Everything, because it helps you. If I can get someone to truly calm down, it's interesting how they will then begin to identify things in a more healthy way, even though they think they're already calm. No, you're still operating on an 8, on a 10, but since it's not 10, it feels like 0 to you. But you still have an 8. Let's get you down to 4, and then let's talk about your narcissistic spouse. Yeah, and not just out of fear or anxiety. So that anxiety plays a very, very big part. And I didn't know that. And so what I would do in the pastoral situation with the couples, and I'm calming myself. If I didn't care what they thought, or whether people would give their tithes, or whether I was even pastor here or not, what would I do? The calmness helps me guide myself. And so I give people a lot of help to bring their calmness up so they can begin to think, I don't have to give them the solutions. If I can help them differentiate and calm down, they go, but then I need to do this. You didn't need me for that. You needed me to help you get to the place where you could see that. So you don't need the answers from me. You just need to learn to find the self that's not highly charged.
And Jerry, calming down is the opposite of what a highly manipulative person will try to do to you. They'll often try to push you into a very heightened,
that's the whole
emotional
game.
Yeah.
That's the whole game. And if we stay highly charged, we won't leave.
So how do we find the thing that's best for calming us down?
Well, and I've got a bunch of tools for doing that.
We'll put some links in the description for people to check out.
I've got a program you can go and learn, because I want to do that. I want to help people to reduce that chronic anxiety. And some of the things we need to do are to, for example, people will say, here's a good example. I just feel shame all the time. And it so bothers me, Jerry. Would you help me with that? Sure. And I would say, if I decided you now must forever live with this shame and you cannot change it, what would it matter? That's one question I might ask, because I want them to get a different perspective. And perspective change helps calmness happen. So I'll even say silly things. I'll even say, well, I don't even know how to help you with that. I'm already changing their view of their problem. Now, I don't use that often. That's not something but I'm just giving you an example of things that you could say. Another is, well, you'd like to get rid of this shame. Well, why would you like to get rid of this shame? Well, because it hurts. I always feel bad. I feel like I'm not a good person, blah, 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 blah. Now I cry. I go, I understand. You'd like all those symptoms to stop. I don't blame you. Me too. I did too. What I didn't see in using systems thinking is, what are the downsides of me letting go of the shame? I go, well, there are no downsides. That's the problem. We've now identified the problem. Because if you knew what the downsides were, you would understand yourself so much better, and you'd be closer to letting it go. And I remember doing that even the guilt regarding my mom and I remember a therapist, a Bowen therapist, helped me tremendously. And he said, well, Jerry, if you gave up your guilt, what would be the downsides? And of course, I said, there wouldn't be any. I'd feel great and everything would be wonderful. I said, no, think about that some more, the downsides. And immediately in my mind, it said, you wouldn't have a relationship with your mom. There wouldn't be one without that. And also, if I give up my guilt, I would be doing things and saying things that mom might not approve of or like, which would cause more conflict in our relationship. And he said, I think you probably better hold on to that guilt. Only let it go slowly, because it would be far too dangerous to let it go quickly. And I began to let it go.
Yeah.
So
Jerry,
calmness is very important.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. And we're getting at some really big keys here. It's a lot of things that are counter to where we'd think, okay, I'm going to put more energy in. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to deal with this person head on. But it's much more loosening up, calming down. You have a really interesting insight on the psychology of the television show The Office and some strategies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Strategies in there for dealing with manipulation. You call it the intentional disappointment. Let's start with the psychology of The Office. I think people can relate to it. What is going on there with seriousness, over-seriousness? How do you see The Office?
Absolutely. And over-seriousness is probably as dangerous as high anxiety. Well, over-seriousness is high anxiety. When somebody comes to me and they're just, oh, don't you know, this is so blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, okay, but 1,000 years ago, this didn't matter. And 50 years from now, it won't matter. Why are we making it the ultimate whatever? It's over. What did you say?
Over-seriousness.
Over-seriousness. So we need a less over-seriousness. Playfulness is an important way of reducing anxiety, an important way of loosening things. I didn't say making fun of people. I'm not saying being critical of people in a funny way. That's not what I mean by playfulness. Playfulness is, here might be a playfulness thing. You come to me and say, Jerry, well, we'll use a church situation, though I didn't use it at that time, but we could use that as an example. The second couple comes to me and goes, Jerry, we're upset the way you've been treating the other couple. And I go, has that been bothering you? Oh, yeah, we've been thinking about it all the time. I say, well, it doesn't bother me. Maybe it should, but it doesn't. And I say that from the standpoint of it's not even happening. It's not even happening. A playfulness in being non-serious. You know why Dwight on The Office, you know why he always gets into trouble. His over-seriousness. He misses the jokes. He misses all the playfulness with Jim and Pam, and he misses all that because he's over-seriousness and ends up looking the fool.
So what's an example of that with Dwight?
I think that Jim's always making fun of him, and he's always playing with him. Dwight, you know that computer has a mind of its own. Dwight, what do you mean? Well, didn't you just get a message from it? And Pam's over there running that thing. And he believes in the conspiracy theory that the computers can do that and can come alive, and can be human. And he's over serious about that. That's why conspiracy theorists, that's why people in that realm are so blinded, if I could say, because they are over serious about their theories. They cannot see between the lines. And so they are just so serious. And when I meet with somebody who's like that, I generally go, well, that's probably just way above my pay grade. But Jerry, you need to take this seriously. I probably should. But hey, what's for lunch?
Jerry, I'm so glad you're mentioning conspiracy theories too in this, because I talked earlier about a dangerous man who I dealt with, and one of his favorite things to do to people was to work them down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. It would start with a little bit of doubt, and in a matter of a few months, people would believe that all sports were rigged, that the moon landing never
Everyone.
happened, and he
Never
would have them on the edge of flat Earth. And this would put them in a state where they seemed more dependent on him for truth and more confused about the world, and it was very effective in destabilizing people's sense of reality.
Anxiety. The higher level of anxiety, the more enmeshment.
Yeah.
So the enmeshment happens with that, and the higher level of anxiety, the lower the thinking process. Conspiracy theories is what I call feel-think. You're feeling it, and your brain is then thinking certain things. But that's not the same thing as separating thinking from feeling. It's blending thinking and feeling, and now you're going to go off. Now the feelings are in the driver's seat for your thought process. No different than in politics. And I have people, or religion, or people come to me and say, this president is my favorite and I think he's God's man. This president is the one that's wonderful, or this president is totally bad. This president is totally, whatever it is. The difficulty is the conspiracy theorist is like, you're not seeing the whole. You're only seeing the ends of the bell curve. We need to see the whole. The same is true in working with other people. If someone's totally bad, they probably aren't. Now, I'm not saying there are not evil people out there, and there are people you need to stay away from. Definitely, I understand that. But just in normal things, we tend to go to one pole to the other. We're always doing polarities. And I call that pendulum life or A and B life, when actually the answer is probably C. It's not A or B. And most people can't see the C. I didn't see the C options. And so with the feel think, because if I want to control you, I want to control you through feel think. I want to go through your emotions that will guide your thinking. And it should go the other way around. But that doesn't serve me if you do that.
So with the over-seriousness, with someone like Dwight, what motivates the over-seriousness in the first place? Where does that come from?
Well, I think and I think for Dwight, even though he's pretty braggadocious in that way, isn't he also kind of have a fragile ego? He's got a fragile insides. It's not just solid. Whereas Jim, though he's kind of neurotic and insecure, he's fairly solid, and he's not thinking he's just worthless all the time. I think Dwight tends to believe he's worthless and not as good as other people, and he does the opposite of that. Then I know everything. He goes and does these martial arts things, which are just absolutely ridiculous, so that he can have a black belt, a purple belt, a triple black belt, or whatever, and because he needs that kind of validation. And someone who needs that kind of validation is over serious and will also want to borrow self from you. And, and I think his own brokenness has him in those kind of situations, which leaves him as vulnerable to look stupid at times, to seem foolish at times. He's always overreacting. He's going to go light the fire in the trash basket so he can pull the fire alarm so we can have a fire drill. It's like, what are you doing? What is, because he thinks that's the right thing to do. And he's the super cop because he's on a volunteer neighborhood watch group and sees himself as an FBI agent or something. And he's trying to be somebody because he hasn't found out who he really is.
So, Jim, before we get to how to deal with this in others and the intentional disappointment, as you call it, if we recognize this in ourselves, how do we deal with over-seriousness?
Well, I think over-seriousness, one of the things I do when I feel like I'm getting over-serious, because we all can, and I'm going, wait a minute, hold on, I need to hold on. First of all, how much anxiety am I experiencing really if I'm being over-serious? that this is a battle that it's got to be a battle royale. Why does it have to be a battle royale? What makes it? I'll tell you what it makes. It's because my anxiety's too high. That's why it's got to be a battle royale or an over-serious situation. And I think that's why it's important to monitor our level and to, first of all, to become aware of we have a lot more anxiety than we really realize. And then when we notice, am I being reactive? Is this reactive, even though it seems totally right, but am I being reactive? What am I over-seriousnessing to? What am I, why is the over-seriousness needed? And of course, everybody comes and they have a reason why they have to be over-serious. Well, often it's to convert me or, they got to change the world. Well, wait a minute. Am I the one who's supposed to change the world? I mean, I did think that was my job for a while, get everybody saved and everybody going to heaven. Everybody in all of the earth. Well, that could be a big job, I'm afraid. And I didn't accomplish that either, which is probably to my own salvation that I didn't. But over-seriousness is too much anxiety, too much reactivity. And the way is to begin to see it in that light. Does that mean I don't believe anything? Does that mean I don't have values, I don't have principles? No. But over-seriousness doesn't make them truer. It doesn't make them truer. I can make fun of my own beliefs and still hold them. I don't have to be over-serious about it to make them truer. And it doesn't mean that I'm never serious. I'm not going to do any kind of games if I go to a funeral or in a situation that's not appropriate. An adult wouldn't do that. Though there have been times where I think really wise therapists have even broken the ice because so many people are so uptight, that they can say something that kind of breaks the ice and the anxiety that everybody feels, which makes us so robotic. And it's much better if we're more loose, just like the organ of the skin. You dehydrate it, it's dry, it's brittle, it's not going to work as well. The same is true for the self. The same is true for emotions. The same is true for the thinking. If it's dry, brittle, and hard, that's not good organic living. So over-seriousness is a dry spot that's randy or angry kind of thing. And that's not what the body needs, wants. And you can still hold on to beliefs. I still have beliefs that I believe very strongly. But over-seriousness, in my mind, is like defending myself too much. Methinks you protest too much, if you're over-serious. If you really believe it's true, just believe it's true and live your life that way.
Yeah.
That's all that probably do more to convince anybody. Then let me tell you what, we got to argue about this, and you need to come over to my side, and you're wrong, and you're, okay. And I will tell, okay, I'm wrong. I'll have to just, sort that out in the long run.
So what you're getting at here is a strategy that you call intentional disappointment or a reversal. And another one of these counterintuitive things, kind of from a structural level, how would you describe this? How does it work? What makes it so effective?
Well, I think it makes it effective because it changes your emotional location. And people can truly change if they can change their emotional location. And if you can introduce the sides they're not seeing, just like with you want to let go of your guilt? Well, be careful about that. You may want to look at what are the downsides if you let go of it, which most people haven't even thought of, And that's a very important tool for getting yourself in a different place and reducing your anxiety and going, oh, well, now I see there are upsides to letting go of my guilt. There's downsides to letting go of my guilt. There's upsides to letting go of my shame, which I know all those. I can tell you what all those are. But what you usually don't know is what are the downsides of letting go of your shame. You'll be alienated. Your relationship may not be what it was before. You may say or do things that will make people unhappy around you because you don't feel the shame. You may not be as compliant. You may not be. That could cause a lot of trouble. And your body knows that, so it still holds on to this. So it still, I just better not let this go. Then you're telling me, I want to let it go, but I want to let it go, Jerry. And I usually will say, I know you do, but let me tell you what I'm hearing. You 49% want to let it go, and you 51% don't want to let it go and are not ready. That's what I'm hearing. And they say, well, how do you know that? Because if you were 51% ready to let it go, we wouldn't have this conversation. We wouldn't even be talking about this. And that's okay. And you're not bad. And in fact, I give you permission to hold on to that guilt and shame as long as you choose. You have the right to that. I do not have the right to make you stop that. So don't, and also accept yourself if you're not ready. And I had to spend a lot of time thinking, I am not yet ready to give up my guilt regarding my mother. I am not yet ready to give up my guilt about concerning my mother. I am not yet ready to say that until you don't have to say it anymore.
So with the over-serious person, then the reversal or the intentional disappointment is you get that a child says to their dad, you're the worst dad in the world, I hate you. And then you say, yeah, Billy, I'm the worst dad in the world.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Billy.
What parent wants to say that? and then
parent
how does
whose
it work?
Anxiety is too high.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Too over-serious about their parenting.
Parent is over-serious as well.
Yes.
So then
because
how
now
do
I
we
got
get
to
to
defend
this?
myself. I am not. Look what I've done for you. I'm a great parent. I've read these books. I try to treat you this. Why are you doing that with your child? And I did the same thing. I make fun of everyone because I've been there, done it. I can make fun of everyone because I know what it's like.
So what makes it worthwhile then to do this strategy? And how do we get to a place where we can do it?
Well, it's worthwhile because when you feel the freedom, you then are able to think differently. Because if they say, you are the worst dad, as my son said, you're the worst dad in the world. If that raises my anxiety, which is his whole goal, doesn't he want to raise my anxiety so he can get what he wants? And he wanted to go over and see Tommy at 9:00 on a Tuesday on a school night. I'm not taking him over to Tommy's house at 9:00, and he's in grade school. Why am I taking him to Tommy's at 9:00? I'm not going to do that. But he wanted to go at 9:00 and call them up and see if he's awake. I want to go over and see Tommy. No, we're not going to do that tonight. We got to go to school tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Oh, you are the worst dad in the world. And I said, yes, Andrew, you're right. I just hate you. Well, I'm fine with that too, because I'm going to love you regardless. And I'm going to be the parent that I feel I should be with you. We need to go up and go to bed. If you notice, he's not triggering my anxiety and triggering my insecurity and triggering my family of origin issues of not being a good parent, not being a good person. And so when I am less triggered, I can think better, I can respond better. And they also know, I don't think I'm going to be able to get over on dad now. He's just I don't know what to do to. Now, I could have taught him what to do, but I'm not going to teach him what to do because I want to stay the parent at this point. But people, and they will come back with different, oh, you're just using that reverse psychology. And I said, well, I hope so. Well, would you just stop being a therapist? Okay, I'm no longer a therapist. I am your dad. We are not going to Tommy's and you're going to go to bed. There's no therapy in there at all. That's just clean no. And so again, you're much more flexible like your skin. If it's moist, hydrated, loved, less anxiety, less reactivity, it can do lots of things that you didn't think you could do before. But if you become tense, reactive, anxious, then you're kind of you're doing this robotic motion. That's how I kind of see people doing their relationships. And it's like, oh, geez, that's got it. I know how that feels uncomfortable, and it does. So it's helpful in that it helps free you. And what I'm actually doing is I am self-differentiating from my son Andrew. You can't tell me who I am, and I'm not going to tell you who you are. I understand you're upset. You want to go to Tommy's. I'm the parent. You can't go to Tommy's. It's 9:00. You're free to hate me. You're free to think I'm the worst in the world. And, I even told Andrew, I said, I wish God would have really given you a better dad. But we're here now.
So, Jerry, you called this strategy the intentional disappointment or the reversal. Another phrase I think I've heard you use around it is taking the one down position, which I found interesting
Taking
because
the one down.
in a lot of the manipulation literature, it talks about avoiding the one down position. So I've had Dr. George Simon on the show who writes about manipulation, and he would say that, a lot of manipulation strategies are being put in a one down position and not recognizing it. It seems the distinction with what you're saying is that you can accept the one down position, but not be triggered by it. And that's the key. Whereas some people are unconsciously finding themselves in a one down position, but they are triggered.
Let me go, and you're exactly right. Let me go back to what we said previously. What Dr. Simon, I think, is talking about is the neurotic one down position. I'm talking about the chosen intentional one down position.
Yeah.
That has a whole different system dynamic. Yes, it's problematic if I'm pushed to there because of reactivity. That's a problem. I don't want you to do that. I don't want that to happen. But once you have gained strength, once you have found yourself, you can then begin to choose it, and you're not harmed by it. If it's neurotic, you're being harmed by it.
Can this be done wrong? Can we take the one down position and put ourselves in a worse place? Are there any traps to watch out
possible.
For? Yeah.
I mean, sure, anything can be possible, and of course, I have ept, because we're all learning how to. What I'm learning how to do is staying myself while being around you or them or whoever. I want to stay myself, and that's a learning process that takes a lifetime. So yes, is it possible to do that? Yeah, you could put you in a worse situation. Here's the other thing, and here's what I'm writing a book, and here's what's going in there. We have different levels of anxiety in systems. Level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is maximum anxiety. If you have 4 or 3, level 4 or 3 anxiety in a system, a malignant narcissist would be a high 3, sociopathic would be a 4. If you've got those high level of anxiety, do not use reversals. Do not use paradoxes. You must be straight on. Down in the lower areas where there's more flexibility and less anxiety, they're much more effective. So I don't tell a wife who's being beaten by her husband, well, you think you're a big man for beating me. I'll just take the abuse. Do not do that, because you're in a different systems level of anxiety and level of dysfunction. And you do not want to do that. So the higher the anxiety, the more straightforward I want to be, and the more intentional I want to have greater self-protection. The lower I can be more playful, protection's not as critical. And so that's an important dynamic I try to tell people. Some people need to go no contact with their family, but not everybody needs to go no contact with their family. It depends on where they are on this scale. And in fact, actually, some families can be managed very well with just self-differentiation, but they don't need as much protection, self-protection. Whereas you get up higher, you got to be almost armored, when you get to there, and you need to get away. So I don't know if that helps.
Definitely. And Jerry Wise, as you said, we're talking about a lifelong learning process.
Absolutely.
So before we get to our last topic, for people who want to follow along with you and learn from you, where should people look for you online?
I'm at jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. I'm on YouTube. Most people can just type in my name and they'll get a whole page of options. I do have the Road to Self program. And then I do have the free self-differentiation training that anybody can get free, doesn't cost you a thing, 84 minutes. And people have found they've really been helped even just by that. And then I have over 1,000 videos that are free for you to watch, and, old ones that have a lot of good stuff in them. There's a lot going on there. And then there is a book coming out either late this year or early next year.
We'll put some links in the description for people to check out.
Great.
And Jerry Wise, last of all, people get into these questions a lot because they do want to help their family. We've talked about how we have to help ourselves. Sure. What, if anything, can we do for our family, or is helping ourselves maybe the best thing?
Well, my initial response is yes. Helping ourselves is the best thing. But what you're assuming is, if I'm helping myself, I am not helping my family. I am. Because I'm bringing less anxiety to the family system. I'm bringing more clarity. It is a system that operates on an electric current of emotions. And if you change you are changing the system. It's like a mobile, and you move one thing and everything moves. The same is true with self-differentiation. If you come to a family with better health, you'll be surprised what can happen. I've known people who've become more self-differentiated and less reactive. It changed other people. You can't do it to change other people. If you're doing it to change other people, that's neurotic. That's old issues that you're trying to make your family somebody that you always wanted. Don't do that. You change you. It will then impact the family, and you might be surprised the reactions. I've had families apologize to their person to actually grow themselves up and even start therapy, because the one person stayed mature, self-differentiated, and connected.
Well, Jerry Wise, for going on this journey yourself and for taking so many lessons from it, especially the counterintuitive ones, and sharing them with so many people, and for taking this interview, thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me on today, Brad, and that's been a joy.